Seconds to introduce.
I just want to ask you, Minister, to outline your plans to ensure that no more deaths occur among homeless people and rough sleepers, and any further plans to reopen locations similar to Apollo House that could ensure that there are no more fatalities in the city or in any city throughout the rest of the winter.
Thank you, Lascan Corla. And I might just briefly express my sympathies and condolences to the family of the lady who passed away in Cork yesterday. On the night of the 7th of November 2017, a total of 184 individuals were recorded as sleeping rough in Dublin. As I have said previously, no person should have to sleep rough on our streets or be without shelter at any time of the year. At last September's Housing Summit, I emphasised the need for all housing authorities to have sufficient capacity in emergency accommodation and to have appropriate facilities in place for every person sleeping rough.
For snow right across the country. This morning I walked in Lefanu Park in Ballyfermot, as I always do, and the Brent geese were back. Not enough of them, which is probably a sign of climate change, something we'll discuss later on, but clearly the cold snap is on the way. And the woman to whom you've given condolences to her family, and I want to echo the same for people right across the House here, that we do really feel it for these people who die on the streets. She is the third to die in the last 8 days and the 8th to die on our streets since August. I don't know how you feel about that, Minister, but I feel pretty ashamed of this country to have that knowledge. On Monday in my clinic, 3 middle-aged men, not together and not all at once, but separately visited me in my clinics on Monday. All of them are working, and each of them is about to be made homeless. They don't have a problem with drugs or drink. They're not chaotic. They didn't make bad choices, but they're about to be made homeless for a soup of different reasons. One of them is being divorced and cannot afford to move into an apartment or a flat at the current rate of rents that are available in the city. Another is being put out of his home because the banks have repossessed it, and another is being made homeless because the landlord is selling the property he's renting. There are a myriad of reasons why homelessness is on the increase, and this government is failing to deal with it. It is failing to deal with the long-term consequences, and it's utterly failing to deal with the short-term hardship. And not all homeless people are chaotic or making the bad choices.
Please.
People are being made homeless because of the housing policies.
Minister, for supplementary.
I mean, we have a crisis when it comes to homelessness, and the Taoiseach has spoken about this on a number of occasions. And of course, you know, every time a person dies while rough sleeping, I am notified. I'm one of the first people to be notified of the circumstances of their death. And it is a very difficult phone call to take, I can assure you of that. That is why I have made a commitment, and we are following through on that commitment, to make sure that there will be a bed in place for any person who is sleeping rough, so that by the middle of December, those 200 new emergency beds will be in place, so that no one will be forced to sleep out rough on our streets. And those aren't just temporary beds for Christmas, those are permanent emergency beds into our stock of emergency beds that are there. But of course, on nights where we have difficulties with weather or other reasons, like what we...
There's a recent attempt by the government, and particularly the Taoiseach, to try and normalise this, or to politically normalise it and say it happens, so it happens everywhere, so it's not a big deal. It is a big deal, and it's an even bigger deal when you have people like the McVerry Trust and Inner City Helping the Homeless and political parties screaming at you for the last few years to declare a housing emergency. You declared an emergency to cut public sector pay and conditions, but you will not declare a housing emergency. If you did, it would allow you to CPO big vacant buildings like Apollo House, like the hotel on the Quays, and to open the facilities that are needed when they're needed, shut them when they're not needed and open them when they're needed. It would also allow you to borrow off the balance sheet to build the social housing that's needed. And there's just a complete refusal to recognise that this is an emergency right enough that's been the creation of economic policies and policies to do with developers and vulture funds in this country. And don't tell me that you're throwing everything at HAP, because HAP doesn't work. Ask Selena Hogan, who was on the Sean O'Rourke show yesterday from Ballyfermot, who's been living in a hotel and every day trying to get a landlord to take her and her 2 children onto HAP. This government will give her up to €1,800 or €1,900 a month for a rental in HAP. Landlords don't want to do HAP, and it is not happening.
Minister,
and that is why it is on the increase and it's not being dealt with.
Minister, 1 minute.